Hey guys, good morning, afternoon, and evening. We are having a coffee chat today because I was going to talk about the science of fear that Doc Fearsome, who is a patron, that's topic he wants covered on the show. So I'm going to do that next Saturday. So what I thought I would do, because there's so much going on, is have a little bit of a chat. This is iced coffee. If this was hot coffee, my hands would be like really, really hot because it's a steel mug. So I do like having iced coffee when it's like 1,000 degrees outside. So how are you guys? We are now on we've added a new venue for the show called D Live. Don't know how huge it is. Since Restream has the option of streaming out to several platforms, like mini platforms, I've been going through and trying to find which ones, are really good about, that would be a good fit for what we do here. So it's another thing where outreach is important. A lot of people you should just stick to one venue. And I'm going, well, not everybody likes YouTube. Not everybody likes Periscope. Not everybody likes Twitch or Facebook or DLive. But the whole purpose of this is to try to get the message out to several different platforms rather than just blow up big on one. And I don't expect um, to blow up big on any of them. But if that happens, that's nice too. So I just find that a lot of the things associated with YouTube when it comes to their algorithms, because sometimes I talk about controversial topics on here, but we do it in a way to where we address the studies and the research. We take into consideration if it's like a charged topic where you have an oppressed group, or an oppressed minority, or that sort of thing. We're careful about how we word things so that we don't cause further harm. We don't want to do that. We're here to kind of help educate in that regard. So I kind of want to talk a bit about how do we go about having these conversations. And I've talked about this before. I'm a science communicator. I'm also an academic. I'm a science educator. And how I present information is exceedingly important. You can present really, really emotionally charged and strong topics, that can are controversial without it being a fight or an argument, you know. Oh goodness. Oh, have we got a weird chat window? I as an aside with the chat over here, I'm not certain. I've had lots of issues with YouTube on Restream and they haven't worked it all out yet. So I appreciate your patience. Um, so it's I've tried to fix it with the events. I've set up events before for the on YouTube. And see, that's the thing. That's a thing. I have issues sometimes with YouTube not working and functioning properly, but it's fine everywhere else. So it's weird. So as I was saying, getting into a bit of how do we talk about emotionally charged topics and that sort of thing. I've been open about different experiences I've had, and some people are like, well, that's a pretty harsh thing to go through, whether it's an assault or something like that, or stalking or something in that regard. Good morning, and afternoon, and evening, everyone. So, when you're talking about things like that, it's still important to remember, the person giving that information, particularly if it's a trauma related thing, they may not be sobbing and in tears in discussing it that way, and that's one way you can discuss a traumatic event. Another way, I tend to have thought it out well in advance, get prepared, and kind of discuss it that way. Because when it comes to communication, and I keep coming back to this topic often, I've talked about how to do effective science communication. I've talked about how to educate others, particularly on topics like evolution, where you have a lot of cultural resistance, because people think it's wrong. They think it conflicts with certain perspectives that they were brought up with. So you have to ask yourself, what is the goal of the conversation? What is the goal of the conversation? I don't fight with people on the internet. I don't find it productive. I don't argue about facts. I don't argue about evidence. I don't argue about data unless the data and the evidence that's presented to me have a little bit of, if it was gathered in an unethical way, or if the data had been fudged, like, oh, they kind of tweaked that there, and we talk a bit about how it is you can look at data and go, okay, yeah, that's garbage data, and this is why. This is why we have Worldacity on Sundays. Doc Savage is amazing, particularly he's got eyes that I don't have, even though I'm smart, he's smart. We both know we're smart, but he's had 20 years experience looking at data, and he can, there it is, that's where they got it wrong. And his eyes are different than mine. And I concede that, I know his strengths. I also know my strengths as well. And so that's why I really, really like that show, because we're able to sit there and say, this is where the data's wrong. This is why it's wrong. So even though Worldacity is a comedy show, it's also educational, primarily for adults, to be able to sit there and go, the data's messed up for this reason, But the point is trying to communicate topics that are customarily emotionally charged. So, how do we do that? All right. I said, what's the goal of a conversation? What do you hope to have happen? And if you have your goal in mind, I want to make certain. So when I would teach evolution to farm kids in the Bible Belt, my goal wasn't to make them accept it. You're just going to accept this. You're going to completely change your view that you were brought up with and accept this evidence that I give you. That's an unrealistic goal. Absolutely unrealistic. So I was like, this is my goal. I want them to look at this evidence, look at how the evidence was collected, understand what the words mean, and come up with their own conclusions. Because a lot of those kids were never expected to just, make up their own minds. They were just told what to think. I wanted to teach them how to think. That was the goal, which is much easier to attain. And then if the goal was, I accept evolution down the road, well, if they're critical thinkers, how could they not accept the evidence later? Some people still don't, but they can at least bridge between what they were told, and maybe kind of find that they don't have to be at odds with one another. Science need not be at odds with things. So when you're having hard conversations, the first thing before you go into it, you need to ask yourself, what's the goal? What is the goal? So my goal in that particular case is to give them the evidence, make certain they understand the evidence, let them take it. They can do what they want with it. But I wanted to make certain, okay, what is this evidence and what does it mean? Okay, what is this evidence and what does it mean? Okay, what is this evidence and what does it mean? Okay, now you take all of this, see how they're interconnected. This is what it is. And as long as you understand that, I'm okay. I'm not going to try to change your mind. I don't want to do that. You have a fantastic brain. I put the ball in their court and allowed them to process things on their time, not mine. They don't need to process on my time. That's something else they can do on their own if they choose to. I can't make somebody think, but I can at least say, hey, this is my goal. I want to make certain you understand things. So when I talk about emotionally charged topics, whether it's sexual assault or stalking or predators, and we talk about that, abortion, women's rights, demonetized already because I said sexual assault and abortion. Let's see if I can say it 15 times and then they'll be like, yeah, you said abortion 15 times. We're not going to monetize your video, ScientistMel. I'm pretty certain I'll get an email that says, probably not that. It's a canned response usually. But you know what I mean? So racism. We can talk about racism. We can talk about sexism. We can talk about ableism. We can talk about people who are homophobic, transphobic.
Oh my
We can
God,
talk about
yeah.
all these things.
You're saying all the keywords. I bet you if you went and looked at your YouTube studio, it would already be demonetized at this point.
Demonetized, guys. Nazi. We could talk about the Nazis. We could talk about Nazi science. My sister has a history degree, and it was all on World War I and II stuff. She also had a thing for revolutionary stuff too. But my grandfather fought in World War II. And so we could talk, I thought about having her come on the show talking about Joseph Mengele. She wrote papers about that guy. So I'm like, hey, medical science, Joseph Mengele, let's talk about all of the horrible ethics behind that. I can't get her to do it. I have been begging my sister to come on my show forever. And if you saw the two of us together, be like, oh my God, we look very much alike. She has a more angular face than I do. But we have the same teeth. She has blue eyes though. She has blue eyes. We have the same teeth though. Yeah. We look a lot like each other. My brother doesn't look like either one of us. And my mother swears up and down we all had the same dad. That's a running joke. And she says that our dad is Donny Osmond because our teeth are big like his. And she likes Donny Osmond a lot. That's probably a bit too much personal information there. So, hey, Nate Brody, thank you for the $2 super chat. Nate is going to be on the show Sunday, guys, for Oral Audacity. We were talking about hard conversations and your goal and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about law and science education, how the law has actually intervened in, for instance, evolution education. So that's going to be our talk on Sunday. Anywho, we can have hard conversations without it being a fight. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to yell at each other. We don't have to argue. We don't have to get ugly. We don't have to call names. And this is wildly the biggest reason why I don't fight people on the internet. I don't mind a debate if it's a proper debate. If it's a come on my channel and let's duke it out, and I'm just like, I've done that before. Did not enjoy it. After a while, it felt like I had taken off my gloves and started punching a toddler in the face. That wasn't fun. I did that like once. And to this day, Frank, it was on the Geek Room. To this day, Frankie still apologizes. He's like, I feel it was 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. I was on his channel. It was the first technical YouTube debate I had been on. And I had prepared and prepared and prepared. And I went through and I spent all this time preparing. And this guy just had a script, just running through this script. Would say this, did not even know what the words meant coming out of his mouth. And, I'm like, do you know what this word means? Well, no. Do you know what this word means? No. And I'm like, okay. So if somebody wants me to do a debate with them, I'm like, okay, we can debate, but I need to know what your sources are for your evidence to support your particular side. I will give you my sources for the evidence to support my particular side. And that way we'll have a proper moderated debate where everybody's prepared and we know what we're going to talk about. That's fine, but that's not the majority of video online debates, and so it's like, that, and so that is the kind of debate I would be interested in. Now, I don't need to fight with people. I don't need to argue with people. I'm not interested in, that kind of discourse. So recently, and I was, recently I was brought in a couple conversations online to talk about statistics and information regarding sexual assault. That's a really hard conversation to have with people. So my goal when somebody brought me in to some of these conversations was, okay, I'm just going to give the evidence of what it is. I'm just going to give the evidence of what it is. This is the information I have here. And I often write articles on my website, and you can go there, scientismel.com/articles, and see all of the different things that I've written about even emotionally charged topics, but I have all of my sources in hyperlinks throughout the article. So you can click on the data in the information and, make up your own mind. If you don't want to accept that data, that's fine. But, it's nice to say I don't accept this data because insert a valid, reason. But, most of the time I hear people say, well, I don't accept this data. I'm like, okay, why? Well, it's skewed. Where's your evidence of that? Well, it just is, and I'm like, okay, well, it's funny because then other people ask me when, like, I use the RAIN statistics often, and then I go through and I find, like, there's other organizations that are funded by the government for sexual assault, and you can go and look at their studies and data, and they all kind of back each other up, so you can go and have a look at this. And so my goal when I get involved in those conversations is to say, here's what the evidence is. This is the information. These are the statistics. This is the trend, the overall trend. Now, given, statistics are useful in large populations, but you still have people that could be the 1 to 2%. Yes, that's a thing that happens. You could be the 1 to 2%. That's not indicative of the entire population. And that sucks. And that's a thing that happens. It's probably could be argued that it's just extremely unlucky, you know. But the 1 to 2% thing, the outliers that could happen. That's why we don't solely rely on statistics. We also rely on patterns of behavior within the individuals. And so recently there's been a lot of talk about, false accusations and false reporting when it comes to sexual assaults. Now, the numbers, even worldwide, even the UK, when they do their own numbers, false reporting is about 2% around there. The United States, our particular false reporting is 2 to 10%. But the thing that people don't understand when it comes to false reporting, and there was a study that was done on this. If you go to my website, scientistmel.com/articles, I actually wrote a piece called "Sexual Assault: The Not So Secret Secret." And I break down a lot of those statistics. That 2 to 10%. The FBI has guidelines on how to report false accusations when it comes to sexual assault. But it's not required for police precincts to follow these guidelines. So oftentimes these false accusations are not that. There wasn't enough evidence to pursue charges, like formal charges and indictments. There wasn't enough evidence for that. The victim waited too long to report the assault. That's not a false accusation. Statute of limitations was up. Another one is the victim stopped cooperating with the police. They don't, but it doesn't say why, So in a lot of these times, these reports get labeled as false accusations when it's one of these other things. And the FBI says you should not label them as that if these particular things are in place. And so the 2 to 10% is actually an inflated percentage because they were including all of those particular reports within that percentage. Now, it's still a very serious thing, false accusations. It's a very serious thing, and it's a thing that should not happen. And it's pretty awful to do that. But here's my perspective, okay? You have about, reasonably, if we cut that 2 to 10% in half, let's say 4%. And even that would be inflated, given like, so let's push it closer maybe to the 2 end. That's your chance. That's your risk of being falsely accused of sexual assault. So you have about 97, 98% chance of it never happening to you. So if you're a guy that's worried about false accusations, you probably have a greater risk of getting oral cancer, especially if you're not vaccinated for the HPV vaccine. And if you're old and you have and oral cancer develops and you don't already have antibodies for that particular virus, you're probably going to die. There's not a lot of treatments available. So you probably need to consider that. Head, neck, and throat, there's, HPV is associated with that. You also have a greater chance of being sexually assaulted yourself. 1 in 16 men in college are sexually assaulted. 1 in 71 outside of college are sexually assaulted. So you have a vastly greater chance of actually being harmed by sexual assault, being a victim, than actually being falsely accused. So we kind of probably need to shift the conversation to what is likely to occur. What is the likelihood of something to occur? Okay. You're more likely to actually be hurt, actual physical, sexually assaulted, than you are to be accused of that. So when I'm brought into these conversations, this is what I do. I talk about statistics. Now, if we're getting into the false accusations thing, if you have a person who says, I was falsely accused, and you're like, okay, if they made it through the process, okay, if they here's the statistics again. I'm quoting RAINN statistics. They did a survey of about 1,000 people, and other studies have been done that support similar things. And 1,000 people they asked, and they looked at how many rapes have actually, been reported. They've looked at how many actually get to a prosecutor for indictment. Then they look if it actually goes to trial. Then they look, okay, if they're convicted, if it does it actually, how many actually serve jail time. Around, I think, let me pull up my stats. I don't want to get this wrong. So out of 1,000 rapes, this is RAINN statistics, 310 are reported to the police. 57 out of 1,000 lead to arrest. 11 out of the ones that are reported and out of the arrests, 11 of those people will get referred to prosecutors. Out of the 310 that are reported, out of the 57 that are arrested, out of the 11 that actually make it to a prosecutor, 7 will have a felony conviction and 6 are incarcerated. That's approximately 1.9% of reported rapes lead to incarceration, and 2/3 of rapes go unreported. And some people are like, well, sexual assault isn't rape. Well, rape is a form of sexual assault. Sexual assault is an umbrella, and you can have different types of sexual assault throughout that. And we need to, and in the court and law needs to get better at defining what each one of those are. But that's what you're looking at. So for every reported rape, out of 1,000 rapes, if a person is raped, there's a 98% chance that the attacker is going to walk free and never serve jail time. That's what we're looking at. Now, when it comes to why don't women report? Why don't women report? A lot of the reasons, and there was a study that was done And again, I have all of these links on my website, scientistmel.com/articles. The title I have is Sexual Assault, the Not Secret Secret. A lot of women don't report, largely due to three things. Negative reactions from professionals led survivors to question if it is worth discussing any further. 2, negative reactions from friends and family reinforced feelings of self-blame. 3, negative reactions from either of the above reinforced personal uncertainty as to whether or not they were actually raped. So people asking them questions, are you certain you said no? Did you have too much to drink? Are you sure he raped you? Or she raped you even. It could be a girl hurting a man, or a woman hurting a man, or a man hurting a man, or a woman hurting a woman. Any of those scenarios. I'm not trying to base this on gender, but just keep this in mind. The negative social response kind of did a bit of a gaslighting on a lot of these victims who even had evidence to show that they had been raped. But this is kind of where that false reporting, victims stop working with law enforcement, likely due to those reasons. That doesn't mean the rape didn't happen. That just means that it's doing their head in, and they're having to deal with a negative backlash from that. So after having gone through all of this, if we take a scenario where go back to the scenario where we have a guy that was reported on, was arrested, made it to the prosecutors. Okay, remember, only 11 out of that 310 that were reported got to prosecutors. Managed to get convicted. That was 7 out of the 11, and managed to actually serve time. That's 6 out of that 7 out of the 310 that got reported. If you have somebody who went through that entire process, the odds overall were that he had a 98% chance of walking free. That's the overall odds that for this particular man, which means there had to be a substantial amount of evidence to support the claim of rape. So when somebody says that they were falsely accused, actual completed rapes, the rapist has a 98% chance of walking free. If they manage to get through that entire process and then after the fact says I was falsely accused, when you have medical evidence, you have, actual DNA, and you have all of the other things associated with a violent act in place, and you make it, and let's say that this person is your friend. Let's say you find out, and this person is your friend, and you find out that they had a particular conviction, and you like this person, and that's part of their past. And then this person says, no, I was falsely accused. And you have all of this evidence, and you understand the statistics associated with that. And then if you make an excuse for them, that's an apologetic remark. You may not like or endorse any kind of rape at all and find the whole act vile. But if you make an excuse for a person where statistically, they would have walked free, most rapists walk free. I mean, come on. Statistically speaking, they had a 98% chance of never going to jail. So, let alone get to prosecutors and convicted. So if you have a situation in that case where they've gone all the way through that process with a substantial amount of evidence, and you ignore that evidence and you double down saying, I believe this person, I've ignored all this evidence, and I still believe this person, you're making another excuse. You're becoming an apologetic. You may not have been an apologetic, but if you continuously double down and make excuses when the evidence does not support your perspective, that's essentially what apologetics is. We see this with flat earthers. We see this with anti-vaxxers. We see this with people who blatantly ignore evidence because it doesn't suit their particular perspective. They may not be a bad person at all, and they might not even realize that they're doing it. Um, and we don't like to be labeled certain things, do we? As a group of individuals, we don't like to be labeled a particular thing. Um, and I get that. Yep. So I'm going to catch up on the chat here. Mark, yes, I have addressed about the fact that false allegations are made. Yes, I have addressed that. And I talked about how it's reported incorrectly by the precincts, and that the FBI has guidelines that the precincts are not required to follow by law. They're not actually required. And so a lot of times these false allegations, or what in reality, when they get labeled as that by the precinct, let me see, I'll give you the information on that, since I'm being asked that again. That's okay. I don't mind answering questions. And I don't, here we go. Open link in new tab. Here is where I got this information. So I'm going to put this on the restream chat. If it'll let me. It won't let me. That's just great. Why can't I put this on the restream chat? Bull, can you put this in at least on the Facebook chat? Because I can't seem to do it. So I'm going to post it here. Here is a website with that study on false accusations. This comes to us from nsvrc.org. So if you've not checked out that website, that particular organization, their whole and sole purpose, it's that this was violence. It was part of the Violence Against Women, where they spent some money and did more research and started to go through and do more studies about this. In this particular study, this is kind of like the overview of false reporting. You can get more information about that, and they list their citations. A lot of the times, these false accusations are actually what would be considered a baseless report. They don't usually put baseless report on there, meaning it's a baseless report is one in which it is determined that the incident does not meet the elements of the crime, but is presumed truthful. So there's not enough evidence there. A lot of times, so this particular one, they talk about a review of the research. A review of research finds that the prevalence of false reporting is between 2% and 10%. The following studies support these findings. Now, a multi-site study of 8 U.S. communities, including 2,059 cases of sexual assault, found 7.1% of false reporting. Okay, stay with me. A study of 136 sexual assault cases in Boston from 1998 to 2007 found a 5.9% rate of false reports. Using qualitative and quantitative analysis, researchers studied, so these are 3 different studies, 812 reports of sexual assault from 2000-2003 found a 2.1% rate of false reports. So that 2 to 10% is based a lot on those particular studies. Now, keep in mind, it can vary from different towns, but many published reports from the precincts do not clearly define a false allegation. Now, the FBI, where I talk about the FBI, the determination that a report of sexual assault is false can be made only if the evidence establishes that no crime was committed or attempted. Now, this is the IACP National Law Enforcement Policy 2005, pages 12 through 13. So, the FBI and the IACP have issued guidelines that exclude certain factors by themselves from constituting a false report. Here is, these guidelines. Insufficient evidence to proceed to prosecution. So there may not be enough evidence there for them to even be sent to prosecutors. Delayed reporting. They waited too late. Victims deciding not to cooperate with investigators. we've talked about that a little bit with some other studies about why, after they report, they kind of withdraw. Inconsistencies in victim statements. So anytime if there's a victim who makes a statement, that statement's really important. If they're in shock or traumatized, they may not remember all of the events right away. And then, as they go through time, they start to recall certain memories. I still remember what my attacker smells like. I still remember that. So anytime I have that, I come across that smell, it's very vivid. But that wasn't something that happened right away, and so you can have inconsistencies within the victim statement. It didn't mean it didn't happen. It's just because the victim had inconsistencies, they couldn't use that as another piece of evidence. So it continues on. While some police departments may follow these guidelines, it is not mandatory, and as a result, many do not. And since they don't follow these guidelines, a lot of these get mislabeled as false accusations when they're not. And that needs to change clearly. So thank you for putting that in there. So just going back through and kind of reiterating that. That's important to keep in mind. Now, when we get to the whole apologetic argument, where are they, making an apologetic argument and stuff like that? A one-time infraction of screwing up does not define you. Okay, let's be clear about that. I have made ableist statements, and I'm ashamed to admit that. I've made statements when Stephen Hawking passed away. I'll give you an example. When Stephen Hawking passed away, I saw something about him being free from his chair. Okay, and I thought, wow, he was restricted and he couldn't communicate, but I forgot. Well, I didn't forget. I didn't focus on the fact that he overcame that and still did amazing science. And so some friends of mine who actually are bound to wheelchairs. They're mobile sometimes, but they still need a wheelchair because, they have chronic pain or for whatever reason or respiratory issues. We're like, hey, that wheelchair was very much a part of who he was, and I'm in a wheelchair, and I can't imagine not being with it even in the afterlife, if that's a thing. And then I realized, man, I just kind of reinforced this ableist type of mentality where Stephen Hawking, heck yeah, he was in that wheelchair and he was rocking it like it was nobody's business. I was completely wrong for perpetuating this type of mentality. Now, that was an ableist statement, that I promoted. That was an ableist statement that I promoted, and I didn't even think about it in that perspective. Does that mean I'm holistically ableist? No, it means I had a stupid brain fart and I was dumb at one point in time, and I needed somebody else to say, hey, what you said, that's wrong, dude. This is why. And I'm like, oh my God, light bulb went off. You're absolutely right. And then I'm like, this makes sense. I get it. That is an ableist image, thinking Stephen Hawking is now free from his wheelchair in the afterlife. I'm like, wow, that's an amazing thing. And we all romanticize that, don't we? But we don't think that people who are in wheelchairs, they're like, they didn't have their wheelchair, they'd never be able to leave their house. And you're like, that is a part of who they are. Some people may think, and I'm not saying all people in wheelchairs think this way. So let me clear that up. There are some people who are like, yeah, I want to be free from my wheelchair. But there are other people like, no, I love my wheelchair. It gives me mobility, and it's an integral part of what I do every day, and I'm happy I have it. So it's like, you can have. And so, but see, the thing that I think is important, if I doubled down and told this person, That's not ableist. You're just wrong. Number one, how dare I? And if I got personally offended that they said that my statement was ableist, two, I'm missing the point entirely. I don't get to tell another person that this thing doesn't hurt them and they're wrong. I don't get to do that ever. That's not how that works. If this thing is like, hey, that's kind of ableist and this is why, and they give me sufficient evidence, I'm like, okay, I got you. And then I go through. But does that make me holistically ableist? No. It means I messed up. And, okay, I own that. And I'm not particularly proud of the fact that I've made statements, but I am very, very happy that people care about me enough to say, Mel, we know you mean well, but honey, come on over here. Let's have a chat. This is why this is wrong. And I go, oh my God, okay, I am sorry that that caused you any kind of pain. And I'm very sorry that this is still a thing that we have to worry about, two. And three, moving forward, I will take this into consideration in what I say and how I behave and how I interact with people. There's nothing wrong with that. How in the world are we going to progress as a society if we're not willing to say, hey, I say wrong stuff all the time and it's okay. It's okay for me to say wrong stuff sometimes. And I think this whole idea that we can never be wrong is part of the reason why we are getting dumber as a society. Honestly, this is coming from an educator. Okay, I taught 5 years in the public school system. I have taught at university. Okay, I have returned back to academia. All right, I've done education research as well as scientific research. I have talked at length with people in science education research. Amanda Glaze, Evo PhD, she and I love her about evolution education and how can we do that. So it's like, what in the heck and heck? How can we move forward as a society if grown adults cannot admit that they're wrong without having some kind of attack on their ego? And people are like, well, I've been called thin-skinned. I've been called she can't take criticism. I'm like, let me just address that quickly. I've got 2 master's degrees, both of which I had to defend. First master's was easier than the second one, if I'm honest, but that's me. The second one was in chemistry. I had to stand for 2 hours in front of my committee of 3 people, 100 years worth of chemistry knowledge between the 3 of them, and defend that I knew what I was talking about and to be able to answer their questions in a sufficient manner for them to say, yes, she deserves this master's. Didn't matter that I had completed all the coursework and ended up having a 3 point, I think it was a 3.7. I think my GPA, graduate GPA is 3.75, 3.5, something like that. I've made very few B's in grad school classes. But if I couldn't stand up in front of my committee for 2 hours being rigorously grilled, stripped down to my core, I had to do that twice working on my chemistry master's and be able to stand there and say, I don't know that answer, sir or ma'am, but this is how I would get that answer. And be able to discuss, can I email this to you later? And to be able to say, I don't know. And be able to accept correction right then without getting my feelings hurt, or I wouldn't have a degree. No, friends, I am not thin-skinned. I just have a very, very short tolerance for people, or at least a short amount of patience for people who resort to name calling and can't take criticism themselves. And I just don't argue with people on the internet because they don't have to. So that's just kind of kind of a bit of that. I can accept criticism, but I'm going to consider the source of the criticism as well. And if it's not productive, if you're not telling me why I'm being criticized, and if you're not telling me options for solutions, it's not really constructive, is it? Just saying, blah, 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 this is my opinion, enter. Okay, evidence, and why? What's your goal here? And lastly, how do you expect me to do better next time? What do you want me to do? How would you do this differently? Usually it's just the first, and two and three doesn't even play into it. So I consider the source of the criticism, and I consider what's your goal? What's your goal of this? What exactly are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to be a friend, this is not how friends do things. And you're, being a bit of a jerk right now. How do you frame how are you framing your conversation? So it kind of goes back to the beginning. We're making a big old circle here. It's all connected. It's like the Lion King, the circle of reason. It's the circle of reason. We all have, it's all interconnected. If you're going to give somebody criticism, you have to ask yourself, what is the goal of the conversation before you even get started? What are you going to do? What do you hope to accomplish by having this conversation? That's me every single time I engage with someone. What is my goal here? Am I trying to educate them, which is usually the goal, and giving them the correct information? And I can do that. And if it gets ugly, I'm like, yeah, you're on your own, man. I'm not going to fight you. Life is too short. And I could be binge watching trash television instead of hearing people calling me all kinds of ugly things on the internet. I'm just, what I mean? So guys, have controversial conversations. Do it. But be willing to accept that you're going to make terrible, terrible statements sometimes. And that's okay. Don't double down. Say, all right, I concede that this was not the smartest thing for me to say right now. And thank you for being a good enough person to point this out in a respectful way. And this is what I'm going to do in the future instead of saying this dumb thing or doing this dumb thing. That's what we need to do. Golly, can we be adults? This is what grown-up land is supposed to be, but often it just feels like middle school. When I'm looking around at people, I'm like, good gravy. Good gravy. Somebody posted a thing. If you want to find out if somebody respects you, tell them that they're wrong about something and see what happens. So it's just like, yeah, absolutely correct. You want to find out if somebody respects you or not, tell them that they're wrong about a thing, and then see what happens. Oh my gosh. It's funny. Civil discourse is a good thing. And so that's why we can talk about hard topics without giving a platform to those people too. That's kind of another thing. We're getting close to rounding up here. We can talk about controversial topics and hard things without giving a platform to those people. Because there's some channels and some shows I will never darken the door of, because of the fact I don't want to be associated with any channel that, even if it's not intentional, you can inadvertently give somebody a platform if you give them a venue. You can. And do you want that to be your venue, or do you want it to be a neutral venue? So you can actually engage in discussion, but if it has your face on it, if your venue has your face on it, and you've given the mic um, to somebody uh, who who's a, you know done horrible things, uh, in just pick something, doesn't matter, just done awful things, um, then you run the risk of inadvertently pushing their narrative and encouraging the whatever oppressive things that they have done and or continue to push. So it's kind of like, uh, you know, it's just have hard conversations. I'm already demonetized because I've said abortion, Nazi. If I said vagina probably 3 times, I'd probably be demonetized, and the Beetlejuice YouTube demon would come up and go, bing, demonetized automatically. I've said sexual assault and rape, so I'm pretty certain I'm demonetized too. So we can have hard conversations, guys, but we also need to be able to admit that we're wrong and care enough about each other to go like, it's like some people who just cannot admit that they're wrong about a thing and double down on it. I almost want to go, where are your friends? Because to me, that's the equivalent of me putting my clothes on inside out, having lots of broccoli in my teeth, unwashed hair, and walking around with shoes that don't match and smelling like cheese and making an utter fool of myself, when that's when I need my friends to go, ooh, Mel, honey, you need to shower. Go brush your teeth, dear. Are you okay? So when I see people who like double down on, they're just utterly and blatantly wrong, I'm like, where are your friends? Where are your friends who need to pull you aside, and say, honey, no, you have taken off your pants and you're hanging your butt out the bus window of life. We can all see it. Just, whoo, go sit down, it's just like, honey, no, get off the internet for a little while. Get off the internet, take a day or two, go walk outside, get you some air. I'm gonna chat with you over here. We're gonna have a private little call, and we're gonna sort you out. It's like, where are people's friends to point out? And that's why you need a diverse group of friends. I have friends in wheelchairs. I have friends that are women of color. I have friends that are men of color. I have friends that have different types of mental illness, because I can rely on them to say, Mel, I love you, but that statement was a little bit racist. I'm like, oh my God, okay. And then I have to go. And I'm like, okay, guys, somebody pointed this out to me. And you can read my Twitter when I do that. I'm like, somebody pointed out this. You're right. This is wrong. And I need to not use this type of dialogue. And here is why. So in the future, I'm going to do this instead. And then I'm like, that doesn't mean I'm a racist. That means I need to, reevaluate some of the things that I say, so I'm not making statements that perpetuate the horribleness that is racism. It can be what we call microaggressions. Look up microaggressions. That's the thing. I'm susceptible to them. Just like anybody else, any person is, women are susceptible to sexism. Dudes are susceptible to sexism. Women can make sexist comments. Men can make sexist comments, and they may not be holistically that. So it's like, and I gave the ableist example earlier, and that I would have not thought about that had it not been for a friend who's in a wheelchair saying, Mel, I love you, but this is upsetting. And I'll tell you why. And I'm like, wow, you're absolutely right. And then I get to go, okay, this is why this is a problem. And then I can share that with others and say, hey guys, somebody told me this is a problem and this is why. So let's try not to do this and consider to be kind. So I try to be kind. I always say default to kindness. I always try to do that. And it's like, I'm going to mess up. but that doesn't mean I'm a racist. That doesn't mean I'm a sexist. That doesn't mean I'm an ableist. Doesn't mean I'm a rape apologist. But I might make statements that can fall into those types of realms, you know? So I hope that clears up things so we can have hard conversations. So, what do we do when we have a hard conversation? Number one, what's the goal? Okay, what's the goal? If you're going to criticize somebody, if you're going to pull them aside and say, honey, you got your shoes on the wrong feet and you smell like cheese, you need to know what the goal is. What's the goal? Do you want to modify the behavior? Do you want to help them? Do you genuinely want to help them? Two, execute according to your goal. Consider your actions and your words according to your goal. 3, be kind. Default to kindness. 4, be willing to admit that you're wrong. Be willing to admit that you're wrong, and that's okay. Be willing to admit that you're wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm wrong all the time. People on the internet tell me, and I'm like, okay, but I'm going to need evidence that I'm wrong, and I will look over the evidence and we can have a conversation, and then I can modify accordingly, and then we can move forward, just like anybody else. But you can't ignore evidence. If you double down repeatedly, you become the thing that you don't want to be: the sexist, the racist, the ableist, the rape apologist, whatever. If you double down in the face of evidence repeatedly, over and over and over again, you become the thing that you say that you're not. And so that's kind of what you got to do, Oh, it's okay. We can talk about stuff. And I like you guys, and if I message you, I'm like, hey, what you said right there might be a bad thing because of this, kind of pointing this out, So, and also, if somebody comes at you, consider the source of the criticism. That's what I do. I don't take criticism from people that when I consider the source. If the source of the criticism is a particularly toxic person, I just ignore it. And I'm like, hey, yeah, you call me really ugly names here. So yeah, it's just, So yeah. We are wrapping up here. So let me talk about a few things about the show that are not like just charged and ooh. So Sunday, tomorrow, Oral Audacity. Me and Doc Savage are back with Nate Brody. Nate's going to be on the show. He's my favorite law professor. So Nate's going to be on. And he said that he wants to talk. And usually when we have a guest on, we ask them what kind of science you think they want to talk about. Since he's in law, we are going to talk about how science and law, as far as law, has played a hand in science education, and not always in the best ways. It's like the Scopes monkey trial. That'll be one of the things. So it's we're gonna do that. And guys, I'm gonna get new intros and screens for this show. Peter, also known as Gonna Go For It, is going to make me new intros and animated screens. So we'll have like little stuff, and then we'll have like a little section over here somewhere for the chat. So we'll have all of that. I'm looking at trying to see if I can incorporate videos, my own little animated videos that I kind of do with Oral Audacity into the science of. So I'm going to start making more of that. I'm going to do some short films using action figures. I'm trying to set up a space in my house where I can do green screen and have like little fun, because I have so many collectibles. Doc has called me a hoarder of the geek stuff. There might be truth to that. I do like the geek things and the nerd things. I got NASA stuff. So that'll be awesome. That is going to be awesome. So we're going to do that. We're going to have that coming up. And I've got I'm learning the editing software that I have. I think this is, what is the name of this software? I have it right here. It's Power Director. So I bought, when I got the new computer, I bought editing software, and so I'm wanting to do more short films with that. So that'll be awesome. I'm probably going to start taking more snippets from Audacity and making little shorter versions. I've been posting a few of those, kind of trying them out to see. And I have posted one from R and Raw, Hannibal and Monty. I'm going to see if I can get them back on the show for Audacity again, because that was great. And so please do check that out. Audacity is not family friendly, just letting you guys know. So consider like ages 14 and older, because sweary words happen on that show. Doc is Scottish, and I want him to be who he is, and he swears a lot. And sometimes a swear word comes out of my mouth, sometimes too, which I don't always do that. Not while I'm live streaming. I have had colorful adjectives in the past when trying to do something in my house. I call them colorful adjectives. Anyway, so it's not super family friendly. And sometimes we talk about charged topics on here, but we do it in a way that's accessible. But I still maintain that my channel is primarily like 13, 14-ish and older anyway, because of some of the controversial topics we discuss. But but those are the plans that are coming up ahead. Next Saturday, we're going to start out October, our scary month, and we're doing Doc Fearsome's. Doc Fearsome gave me this topic for the science of fear. If you have any Halloweeny topics, if you're a patron, I do a show on your stuff automatically. You just give me your topic, I will do a show just on that. So we could do that. We could do the science of fear, maybe the science of scary clowns. We could talk about the history of clowns. They started out scary, guys. So I feel validated in my fear. That might be a thing. We could do the science of horror films. What do you guys think of that? Talk about how it is that a horror film comes together and scares the bejesus out of us. How does that work? We could talk about Hitchcock. We could talk about all the science between all of those things. So those are coming up. Now, I will be in the Netherlands the weekend of the 11th, 12th, 13th. So I think October 13th, or is it 4th, 5th? So I think it's October 12th. Let me look at my calendar. My days are run together. Yes, October 12th, I will be in the Netherlands. I'm not certain because I'll be visiting Doc Savage, guys. He's gonna take me to the Natural History Museum, and they have an ark there, and I got a camera. So we're going to film Natural History Museum stuff in the Netherlands, and that'll be great. I'm gonna go to the Van Gogh Museum, so I'm gonna get some footage there. And we're gonna go to their ark. I think he might take me to Germany for dinner. I'm not certain, but and I got to go hang with Doc. So we're gonna record a lot of stuff for Audacity and talk about that. And I might have some stuff for the science of when I get back. So stay tuned. Also, you can reach me anywhere on the internet. Just type in ScientistMel. I have a website. You can contact me through that for email. Now, please bear in mind, I do have a day job. And so I will respond as much as I can. Direct messages on Twitter are probably the easiest way to contact me, because I can at least go back and find it. And if I said I was going to do a thing for you, please have patience, because I am, I have a lot happening and going on, and I stay pretty busy. And so I appreciate patience if I forget to do something for you, and I said that I would do something for you. Please, please, please have patience with me. Shoot me a message again and let me know. I have things I have to do today for other content creators. So I'm probably going to write it on my hand. And that way I take my hand with me everywhere. So I'll probably be like, oh yeah, I have to do these things. So yes, have patience with me. All of my sources for my shows can be found on my website, scientistmel.com/resources. So if you're like, where's your evidence, ScientistMel? It's on my website. You can go there and get it anytime you want. It's fantastic. I'm now streaming on D Live, Twitch, Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. If there's another service that you use and you'd like to see me there, let me know. Pretty certain it might be on Restream already. If you have a topic for the show, particularly a Halloweeny one, send it to me because I am all about Halloween. It is my favorite holiday. I love it so much because I like to cosplay and it's fun. So do check it out. And Audacity airs every Sunday, 3 p.m. Central. May not have a show the weekend I'm in the Netherlands, just giving you a heads up for that because, I'm in the Netherlands. Want to enjoy that, videotape the things, and share the trip with you later on. And I don't have anything else, Bull. Have you got anything? I meant to talk to you and stuff, and then I just went off.
No, that's fine. I don't have anything additional other than I did pick up Pimp Monk's Morning Wood show, so that's a thing. And yeah, that's it.
Wow. Yeah, and guys, if you are a content creator and you're interested in having somebody run your show, honestly, since I've pulled Bull on, I pay him every month. And if you're a contributor of mine on Patreon, a portion of that money goes towards Bull and what he does. Because I pay him every month for stuff. I also have a shop, scientistmel.com/shop, where I got t-shirts and coffee mugs and stuff like that. And also Streamlabs points. I'm going to go through and start adding up points. I think around Christmas time, I'm going to see which viewer has the most points, and I'm going to put together some merch and send it to you. Gonna send you some merch, guys. So when you watch your Audacity, play along on our challenges. We have challenges there. Roswell does, is it a real conspiracy or not? Karen does, is it a real product or not? Might bring in a new person. I'm not certain yet. Maybe Karen will be back soon. Doc will not be thrilled about that, but hey, that's what it is. So in December, I'll send out a thing. I'm going to go in Streamlabs and dole out some points. And I think I'm going to increase the amount of points for how much time you're on the live stream. So you can get points by watching the show, being on the live stream. You can get points by participating in the different games that they have associated with that. I don't know. I've thought about maybe bringing back This Week in BS, Bull, but I know that's like a third show for you. So we would have to renegotiate, you doing a third show. So that's fine. I pay Bull and we negotiate terms. We have it in emails and we write it down because we like to just be on the level like that. And Bull can get merchandise too. And you haven't taken advantage of that yet, Bull.
I haven't even gone and looked yet, to be honest. But there was a couple things I wanted to and thought about, beforehand, like the SJ underwear. But like, what does it say on it? I forget. Like
blocked by.
Blocked by. Yes.
It's on each butt cheek, and in the front too. And they're flippy floppies. And if you get the Blocked by series merchandise, essentially that particular category, anything in that category, all of the proceeds go to charities, including Planned Parenthood, the Trevor Project, the World Wildlife Foundation, American Anxiety and Depression Association. And you can see all of the different research groups and charities that benefit all of them. So let's see. So if you're interested in doing that, we just take people's bad behavior on the internet, put it on merchandise, be highly niche and highly specific. It's super hipster of you to do that, but all the money, all the proceeds go to various charities. So there you go. So this has been awesome, guys. I'm so excited. So woohoo! We got next Saturday is the Science of Fear. This Sunday, tomorrow, Nate Brody's on. Dragnaut's going to be on in a few weeks after that. I think in the middle of October, Dragnot will be on. We're going to talk about cancer myths. Found a new person on the internet, guys, who's a alternative medicine cancer coach. That's going to be fun. And I know Doc is going to enjoy ripping that to shreds. Cannot wait. Gonna be loads of fun for that. Anywho, there you go. And I am going to start working on my Discord more. I finally learned how to use it. So if you're interested in joining the Discord, we'll start incorporating that into the chat as well. So we'll be able to kind of get that going and maybe, and have a call-in option in the future on the show. So you can call in and talk to me and we can engage. If you have verbal questions, you can call and talk. We're going to get that together. So these are all the up and coming things, guys. I'm so excited. How exciting is this? What an amazing time we have to have such fantastic technology. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the new intro and screens, guys. You're going to love it. So thank you, Peter, for that. Also, Hannibal and Monty, that Audacity that we use with Audacity in our show, that was made by them. So do check out Hannibal and Monty. I'm going to shoot them a message and see if they want to come on soon. Get them back on here because they're a scream. I love having them on the show, man. They trip me out. They're funny. So with that said, thank you guys for being here. I'm going to read. I love Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is amazing. If you've not gotten this book, The World According to Mr. Rogers. And thank you, Billy, for giving me my Mr. Rogers pop. Right there. If you hadn't checked out, Billy got me that for my birthday. So I'm going to read from the Book of Rogers, hey. So let me pick a section. We are all neighbors. I'm going to go to We Are All Neighbors. All right. We are all neighbors. Here we go. Just opened right to it. Page 147, Book of Rogers. When you combine your own intuition with a sensitivity to other people's feelings and moods, you may be close to the origins of valuable human attributes, such as generosity, altruism, compassion, sympathy, and empathy. You always make each day special for me. You know how? By just your being you. I will see you guys tomorrow on the Audacity. Send in squishy science hugs.